Here follows an extract from my book Artful Designs, available from Amazon. Chapter 17, Part 3. It may only have been an hour or two that Scott had been kept waiting, but he looked like he'd been sitting in the waiting room for a week. As soon as James entered the room, Scott jumped to his feet. "Inspector James, thank God you're back. I've been dying to go to the loo for ages, but this plod won't let me go." "Steady on, that's no way to refer to a police officer," said James. "He's only doing as he'd been told." Scott looked abashed. "I do apologise." This was directed to the police officer who had been standing guard. Turning back to James, he continued, "I'm getting stressed and I really need to go. It's making me slip back into my old ways. I haven't done anything wrong, and yet I'm locked in this room like a convict and can't even go to the bathroom." James allowed Scott to make the necessary trip, explaining that maybe the police officer had overstepped what was required in his orders, but was only doing what he thought best. As Scott passed through the door, James gave a wink to the police officer and said he could leave once he'd seen Scott back. "Tell me about your YouTube channel," said James. This obviously threw Scott off his guard completely. "You made me sit here all this time to ask me about my YouTube channel?" "I asked you to wait here so that I could ask you a number of questions. Telling me about your channel will make a good start. Assume that I know nothing whatsoever about the subject and make it easy for me to understand." "I've just got a few videos of my artwork on there. I don't do anything else. I really don't get vlogging. Who wants to listen to somebody chattering on and on about nothing? I used to earn a bit of money from it, but not now. All the rules for monetisation have changed." "Where do you film this artwork then? Do you film as you paint?" "I used to film anywhere I could. I don't film anymore. Since I've been at the gallery, I've stopped with the graffiti." "You mean since you got prosecuted?" This wasn't a question. James wanted to strip away the flummery and get down to brass tacks. Scott just nodded. "You'll notice that this little chat is unofficial," said James. "I'm not taking statements and I'm not recording. I have no interest in historical graffiti cases, but I do need you to tell me how you filmed and edited your material." Scott thought for a moment before he answered. Once he decided to be totally honest with the inspector, he sat up straight and then answered with confidence. "I filmed myself painting wherever I happened to be, on location you could say. In the edit, I made sure that I cropped out any landmarks that could pinpoint where I'd been. For the most part, you just see the wall on screen, but some of the edges of the film are blurred if I thought it would be noticeable as a specific place that could easily be traced. Did you screen off the area so you could select it for editing? I think they call it green screening. Did you do that?" "No, there wouldn't have been time. I had to work fast. I'm sure you can understand why." James merely nodded. "There was no need either," Scott continued. "The wall did the job for me. I didn't need to deselect or magic wand anything out because the image was cropped and it was easy enough to blur the edges. I thought it made the film look better too. It gives a sort of blurred vignette. I almost want to ask what a vignette is, but I'll leave that for a time when I can take a personal interest. Now, let's talk about your friend Finn. Have you been to see him recently?" Scott looked ashamed and lowered his head. His voice was lower too as he answered. "No, I've hardly been recently. I'm not doing any good. In fact, I think I'm making it worse." "You're referring to his brief but dramatic return to consciousness, I think." "Yes, I forgot where my ramblings were taking me. It's hard work to chatter away endlessly whilst avoiding touchy subjects. They crop up more than you imagine. I thought I was helping, but I really wasn't at all." "Had he shown any signs of returning to consciousness before that?" "No." "What about since then?" "No, I haven't been much since then, but no. Just that one time." At this point they were joined by Maddox, who came in carrying a tray of drinks. As Maddox handed a can of cola to Scott, the young lad looked relieved to be included in the round of drinks, and not merely for the sake of quenching his thirst. He beamed his gratitude for a show of camaraderie. "I think we're almost done here, but if we've got a drink, we'll carry on chatting for a bit," said James. "Can you give me any idea of where Finn might have been hiding before we found him?" "I've absolutely no idea. He certainly hasn't been home. Brad and Leighton would have known. Neither was he in any of his usual haunts. I'm out of touch with all that now. He'd have changed them since I was in his good books." "The others would know, though, and they couldn't find him," said Scott. "I should probably now tell you that Finn has properly returned to consciousness," said James. "Has he?" said Scott. "That's great news. How is he?" "Bearing in mind what he's gone through, he's in remarkable shape. He's a bit confused just now, but it's thought that he's likely to make a full recovery in time," said James. "Can I visit him?" "No, that's out of the question. He's a key witness, so you can't be talking to him." "That makes it sound like I'd be conspiring with him. But I suppose I take your point. Can he remember who attacked him?" "He thinks he can, but I can't rely on what he says, even if he thinks he's telling the truth. I do think that he can remember more than he's letting on, though. He has very selective bouts of amnesia." "He's such a fool. Even if he hadn't had his head knocked about, he wouldn't understand the trouble he's in. He's bound to be cagey about the theft just out of habit, but he'd never realise that he's in much bigger trouble for colluding with a murderer." At this point, Scott abruptly stopped speaking and looked directly at James. "He doesn't know that, though, does he? He was in over his head when he got involved in the break-in, without being bright enough to know it. Once he realises that somebody's actually died, even if he doesn't realise how close he was to that being him, he might start to understand that he needs to tell you everything. You have to tell him." "Give me chance," said James. "He'd only just come round. I'm not going to give him such a shock the minute he wakes up. The doctor would have me suspended for misconduct. And, as I said, he really is quite confused, so I'm not sure he could help us much at the moment anyway. It'll keep. Let's give him time to get his head together, and then we'll see. In the meantime, we'll have to do without Finn's help, and that's why you're here." Maddox handed round a packet of ginger nuts to endorse the friendly atmosphere. "Had you ever met Rick before you were at the Whitworth, or did you ever meet him outside of your work there?" asked James. "I'd never met anybody like Rick before I started community service at the gallery. I mixed in far less exalted circles before then. That's what made Finn so mad and started all this trouble." "Did Finn ever come to the gallery before that day?" "Not that I know of. I can only guess why he came at all on that day, but who knows what he's been up to. I'm out of the loop, so I would be the last to know." "We've finished our tea party, so I guess we better get back to work," said James. "I'll probably have some more questions for you, so don't go too far away." "I've nowhere else to go, don't worry," said Scott. For the full book of Artful Designs, available in paperback or as an ebook, follow the link in the cards in the description box or find details on my website at sharonbill.com. Thanks for listening.